Jeff, welcome to the show, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Hi.
It's good to finally chat. It's an honor to have you on. I always like to go back to the start when I talk to somebody. Can you remember your first experience with the horror genre in particular as a fan?
As a kid,
Yeah, I guess.
I was into it very early, probably a little too early. I think my sister, who's a few years older, when my parents were away, I think it was we used to have creature features on Friday nights where I grew up. It was one of those like the a local guy on a local TV station, and he had the skull and the fog coming out of it, and he Bob Wilkins on Channel 2, if you're from the Bay Area. And I think it was 13 Ghosts, maybe the old
Oh,
one.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And it destroyed me. And Night of the Living Dead, probably those two just destroyed me.
Was it one of those things from that point then? Did you have like this morbid curiosity about the genre?
I was really drawn to the special effects. I mean, that was the thing that drew me in. I mean, that very quickly I got interested in how they did it, like how it was made. And so that was and also like the supernatural. I was always into like UFOs and aliens and strange stories.
At what point then through that process did the idea of being involved in this profession become um, more of a realistic thing for you, where you're like, you know what, this is actually somewhere I want to be?
It's funny because we made movies when we were in elementary school, probably middle school, and through high school with Super 8 camera, and then later with video, but mostly Super 8 because doing the film, we had a little editing thing, this little razor thing, and it was fun. And one of my best friends, his brother was a couple years older, and he and his friends were doing horror movies and special effects. And we got the Tom Savini book, and we got we were really into it. So we made some pretty, I wouldn't say they're good, but some fun, not well written, but some fun that all our movies are basically like sizzle reels with one effect. It's like that's what.
Yeah.
And but I never thought about it as a job. It always to me was like that's like a fun thing you do with your friends. It's like a hobby. It didn't land on me that there's a lot of people who work in that business at that age. And then I got into as I got through high school and into college, I was studying sciences. I was always good at science. I come from a family that's really art forward. Like my dad was an art teacher, my mom and my sister's graphic designer. I was like thinking I was going to be, something in the art world. And then, but I was really good at the math and sciences, and I really loved chemistry. So I ended up studying biochemistry in college. And I was pretty close to finishing my degree, the bachelor's degree. And after some really difficult genetics final or something, structures of proteins or something like that.
Mhm.
I remember I was at UC Santa Cruz. I remember laying on the grass and looking up at the trees and thinking, I can't do this for the rest of my life. Like it's not where I want it to be. And I thought, well, what brings me joy? What do I like to do? And I thought about making those movies. And I thought, you know what? I just want to do that. I want to make movies. And it just dawned on me. It was like a lightning bolt laying there. And I think I changed my curriculum. I changed all my classes for the next semester without even talking to anyone at the college, like not even letting them know. And they called me in. They're like, "So you're taking set design and Shakespeare and all this like theater stuff. Like what's going on?" And luckily, UC Santa Cruz is very, cool, very flexible. Staff, and they said I told them how I was going to do it, and I went through that degree in 2 years. I extended 1 year, so I got the theater arts and I got the biochemistry. And I try to use both of those. Like when I'm doing science fiction, when I'm doing something that involves, I try to keep it grounded. Try to put science in there that's at least close to real, and keep the characters grounded and keep it feeling like it could happen. So that's always been that melding of those two worlds has always been sort of the foundation, and off I went. I didn't, then I got to Hollywood. It took me about 10 years to figure it out when I got to LA.
Yeah, and that's that thing I keep hearing about, this, like, 10-year overnight success story. Uh,
Yeah.
everyone sees, you make a movie and they go, "Wow, amazing! You're in theaters, you're on Netflix, you're here, you're there," and not realizing that you've put in probably a decade or more of work previous to that. But would you say that well, I don't know if it's a secret ingredient to success, but like you explain lying there looking up at the trees and being like, I literally cannot do this for the rest of my life.
Mhm.
Is that the difference between people who maybe have a way better chance of succeeding when you just can't see yourself doing anything else?
Yes. And that is the core of, like, often I am approached by a friend of the family or somebody who has a nephew who wants to get into the film business in some aspect of the film business, and I get asked, like, what would you recommend, or what advice would you give, or I have a coffee with them, or just to chat and kind of give them a heads up. And my advice has always been, if you're going to come out here and you have a plan B, like, if this doesn't work in 3 years or 5 years, then I'll go to work at this other place, or I'll finish the school on this thing. And if you have a plan B, go do the plan B right now. Just skip it. Because if your mindset is, I want to go and I don't care if I make it or I don't make it, but I'm going to do it until I die. If I'm writing screenplays under the 405 on a cardboard box, that's fine. And if you have that mindset, you'll make it. You'll find a way to do it. And it's a tough business in the sense that it's always changing. So you have to be nimble. You have to be able to adapt. It's just new formats, streaming, everything, and strikes and whatever. It's just like everything's always changing. It's not as glamorous, I think, as it used to be. But if you really want to do it, and that's where your heart is, then you'll get it done.
Yeah, that's something you mentioned, like not as glamorous. And over the last few years of doing this and talking to different people, I quickly realized, maybe more so off air, things I'd been told that I was like, huh. I think, especially if you're not in LA, if you're not in Hollywood, and then maybe if you're even further removed and you're not in the States, people assume, oh, everybody just lives in $1 million mansions. Everybody just like eats caviar every day and, drinks by the pool and just says, oh, yeah, whatever, I'll write a story tomorrow. And then the reality sets in that, well, actually, wait, no, it's not that.
Yeah, I also think that, Hollywood and movie making has always felt glamorous. Like, there's movie stars and, the Beverly Hills, and that whole thing has always been sort of the idea. But it's become, since the blockbuster movie became the thing, probably started with Jaws, and then after that, and it was all about owning the weekend and making a big smash event. And I think it became more corporate at that point. It became more about box office and less about, like, a crazy little movie that could, Rocky Horror Picture Show. What do you do with that now? You can't do that. And there used to be more room for movies to sneak in, and that mindset has changed things. It's not glamorous. It's like it's a business. It's show business. It's not show friendship or show artistry. So you have to be ready for that. And also, like, the money is, like, you look at the tech business. Like, if you want to make money, go finance, go tech. Like, you're not getting ridiculous. You might make a good living, and if you do very well, you could get rich in film, but you're not making, like, tech money. If that's your thing, then go do that. Right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's something that a lot of people misconceive about, like, oh, you make a movie, and any kind of movie, no matter what it is, once you've made a movie, like, that's it. You can
Yeah,
kind of
you're rich.
finish if you
Yeah,
want to.
no,
Yeah.
no.
Um,
You
speaking
gotta,
of that,
you
then,
gotta love it. You gotta love it. You gotta love movies.
yeah, yeah, and like, and speaking of that, and the business and the industry and like how things are now, um, how how good of a skill would you say is like being able to deal with the dynamics and the I've heard stories about like being in rooms with executives and producers and things, and if you're not thick-skinned, if you don't have that skill to be able to kind of go back and forth with people and don't want to say sell yourself, but be able to convey your idea and, you know, your story or whatever it is you're trying to do, that you just kind of get trampled and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, there's an aspect. I mean, speaking from the screenwriter point of view, there's an aspect of it where you need to be a salesperson, right? There's a when you learn about screenwriting, when you learn how to write scripts, they don't say, and you know, you've got to sell cars as well, right? It's like it's a totally different skill set. And if you just happen to have both of those, great. But if you don't, you could be the best screenwriter in the world, and it can be very difficult. There's ways around it. You can write specs, you can have partners, agents, whatever. But I think you have to either adapt to that and become used to it, and or it becomes really difficult. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your point of view, after COVID, like during the lockdown, during COVID and the pandemic, everything turned to Zoom, right? There's not as many. I haven't been to an in-person pitch in a little while. They're less frequent, and most of the time you're on a Zoom, and that naturally lends itself to a visual deck, right? So you can put up pictures, you can put up some visual elements, I think, that allow you to keep people's attention that you couldn't do live, which I find helpful. When you're in a conference room and you're pitching, Sam Raimi and three other people, and they're looking at their phones, it's really difficult to keep up that that level of, you got to do, it's really hard.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can
So
imagine.
when you put up pretty pictures, they kind of, and there's a timing to it. Like you change the picture every now, like every 5 seconds. So they're like, oh, they got to look at it. They got to look at it. So you keep them looking at the pictures, and they pay attention. So I find it to be helpful, but some people don't like the deck. I don't know. It's a question of what you like.
Yeah, because I've heard very like differing opinions on that. Some people are like, oh, I don't like the Zoom thing because it feels impersonal. I can't like get across whatever. But I can see what you mean about like when you're in a room and like somebody's just there on their phone and they're like, I heard a story actually earlier today about someone said, they went into a room and one of the people that was most important in the pitch was reading the newspaper.
Yeah.
And they were just like, yeah, whatever, just go ahead, start, like, and I'll, whatever.
And granted, they hear a lot of pitches, and you have to remind yourself that you're not like this special thing that's coming. Like they hear a lot of pitches, they hear a lot of stories that are probably similar to your story. There's only a handful of different stories out there, right? But what's your version of it? So I think people used to be slightly more polite about it. Although, I mean, I've had some nightmare pitches. Speaking of Sam Raimi, one of my scariest pitches was with him, and I booked the job, so that's that's good. But I had worn a thin sweater, like a wool sweater, very thin, not thinking that it might be. It was kind of chilly out, but not thinking that it might be warm inside the office building. And they put me at the end of a really long conference table, like at the head of the table, and there were two executives like on the side, and then Sam comes in and sits right next to me, like in the chair, like sitting, like he's like right here, and there's like 15 open chairs, and he sits right there, and he's like, okay, like tell me your story, and he's very sweet and nice and wonderful guy, one of my heroes. So I was like, but I'm a little nervous because it's Sam, and I'm like, oh my god. So I turned and I pitched it right to him, and I'm getting warm because of the sweater, and I could see the condensation like rising in my glasses, and I kept going, like trying to look over the thing. So, in person can be tricky. You got to roll with the punches, and but it's fun.
That's something I always get asked to ask guests about. Things like imposter syndrome gets brought up a lot, but maybe like let's say what you're capable of, what you've done already. But is there a degree of like when you get into a room or get on a Zoom call that you still have to kind of maybe have that little quick chat with yourself? I mean, like, it's fine. Like, I know why I'm here. There's a reason that I'm in this meeting. It's not like, they just brought me off the street and said, hey, this guy, do you know anything about this?
My little mind trick that I play is to pretend that I love pitching. That It's my favorite thing to do. I'm so excited I get to pitch. And if I just turn that switch, that one switch, where I'm like, oh, you want to get in there. It's like, yay, pitching. It's so fun. And then, and after you do it a couple times, the nerves do come down. Like, and once you get a handle on sort of the sense of like, especially with a project that you're pitching to multiple places, usually the first couple are rough, and then you get it down to the point where it's like you can run it without thinking, and it becomes more animated. So it's really that. But I definitely listen to some really heavy metal music on the way in, and then tell myself that I Mastodon playing in the background, and then tell myself that I love pitching, and that usually works.
Is it easier to get original content made, or reimaginings or re-envisionings of existing stories? Because I always hear like two sides of this coin, in the sense of some people say, well, nobody wants rehashed stuff, but then at the same time I feel like a lot of companies are only willing to put money forward if it's something that's kind of established, but obviously a different enough of a take for it to make sense.
Yeah, I think it's easier to get something that's based on IP, either an existing project or a book or a graphic novel. It's easier to get in the room. It's easier to get people to pay attention. It's easier to get them to take a risk, because they're like, well, it worked once before, or there's an audience out there. We know there's a fan base for this thing out there. But you're continually told, we want something fresh. We want something different. We want something that we've never seen before. And I'm always thinking, like, there isn't.
Yeah.
Like you could make an argument that like every now and then there's something that's different, but I think if you really wanted to slice up the genre and like look at it, there's a curse tale, there's witches, vampires. You could knock it down to categories, and it's just really about like what makes it relevant to this time period, to people, to your potential audience. How's it going to impact them? And what's your how is your vision going to make it different and feel fresh? So even if I enjoy adaptations, because the challenge is to take something that has already been done by someone else and really find the thing that's new about it, or the thing that's you about it, right? Just find something that resonates, and you can plug into, that's different. So I enjoy that.
What does your your creative process look like, in the sense of do you actively, I don't know, set aside, I don't want to say like creative time or whatever, do you look at IP and say, that's something I think I might have an interest in? And the reason I ask that is because, like, I assume it's next to impossible to write for any sort of trend, because by the time it gets to that stage, like, that's not relevant anymore. So how do you kind of keep yourself, I suppose, relevant, or your idea or your take?
Usually, the ideas that really grab me are ones that mirror some aspect of my life. Like if there's something that I can relate it to. Can you hear that crazy breathing?
I can actually, yeah.
Wolfgang, stop it. I'm on a podcast, dude. My dog.
It's just like adding a little bit of spookiness in the background.
I was like, what is that noise? Stop it. Oh my God. I was freaking
That
out.
would have been way more unsettling if you were there completely alone.
Yeah, there's no Wolfgang. That's just in my head. Wolfgang. Yeah, like when I wrote The Prodigy, that was an original. I mean, it was based on this news story that Trip Vincent, the producer, came to me and said, here's this thing. I saw this news story about reincarnation and this kid. I want to do a movie that's reincarnation, like Aubrey Rose. Like, let's do something like that. And then I went off and came up with the idea for Prodigy. But I had a toddler at the time, and I would walk through his room at night to check on him. And sometimes it was around the time when they start dreaming and kind of talking to themselves while they're asleep.
Mm.
And I would be walking, and as I'm leaving the room, I'd hear like, how's it? And I'm like what? Like I come back and I'd listen, like, is he saying words, or is it like Aramaic, or like some like hidden language from centuries ago? And is there a demon? Like I immediately like think all these things. So then plus, there's the horror of being a parent, right? That's what the movie's really about, is like the mother and the father sort of like not parenting the same way, and that tension. So that's part of it too. When you have a kid, you don't know who you're bringing into your life. If you're the parent of Jeffrey Dahmer, like, you didn't ask for that. Like, you don't know. You're spinning the wheel, and you could get. Most kids are wonderful, but not always. And so if it reflects something that you can relate to like that, then it tends to kind of write itself. Like, you just know the feelings and where it comes from. And that's so when someone hands you a book, or they're like, we want to reboot this movie that's been done before, if I can find something in the take that reflects an experience that I can understand, that I think other people would understand, then that's my way in. And that's my sort of guiding light. Like, I stick to that thing, whatever it is.
Is that generally how it has worked for you up until this point, where people kind of come to you and say, look, we want you to take a look at, like, for example, Pet Sematary. Was that something that, like, do you seek out those things and go, you know what, that IP, I could really do something with that? Or is it more a conversation people say, we've been thinking we're going to reboot this or reimagine this? Or
it's almost always they come to you when it's IP. I mean, with Midnight Meat Train, which was one of my first, right? That my roommate at the time worked for Clive, so that was very fortunate for me. And I kept bugging him, like, why don't you get me? I was working on original scripts, like, give me a Clive Barker thing, man. And it's like, dude, like, okay, but it's not that easy. And then when they decided they were going to do Books of Blood, and I take a bunch of the stories, he's like, here, reread the Books of Blood, like the big thick volume, and pick one of these that you might want to pitch to Clive. And I thought, well, I know which one I want to do. Like, I've read those stories a million times, but I want to do Midnight Meat Train. And he rolls his eyes, like, everyone wants to do Midnight Meat Train. It doesn't work well as a movie. They had Bernard Rose try, adapt it, and didn't work, whatever. They had been around the block on it.
mm-hmm.
And for me, it was the thing that clicked in that one was in the story, the character Kaufman is, he's an accountant, I think. And he's like, in his head, he's like, he loves the city. And it's this love affair with the city that draws him deeper and deeper into the mystery. But it's his love affairs in his head, and you can't see it. And so the idea to switch him to a photographer where we can visually see his love of the city and what he, trying to get to the heart of it, in a visual sense, worked for a movie, right? So that was the way to get in there. And then Clive liked that, and he let me run around with it a little bit. Like, I came up with some fun stuff that wasn't in his story. Then he changed it and made it his. But he's a wonderful guy. He's actually really fun to work with because he's got such good ideas, and a lot of them are so out there. You're like, dude, I cannot have the guy like Bradley Cooper running over a bunch of cows in the night, like, running over a sea of cows. Like, yes, I like that, but like, we're not doing that in the movie. It's not going to work. He's fun. He's fun.
Yeah, he's actually a guy, because I've had Anthony on the show and a few others.
Yeah, I
and
saw that.
I've been trying to I've been trying to pin down Clive for a while, and more so from I don't like the idea of just asking the same question, like, what was it like, when you made Hellraiser, or what was it like as Pinhead and Doug Bradley? More like, he just seems like such a wild character. He seems quite eccentric. There's actually a really good piece that was on the special features of Midnight Meat Train, where they go into like his art studio thing that he had under his house.
He must have had an apparat hanging at that time. It was probably
just like,
those,
yeah, so wild, like, just so crazy.
Well, he's awesome, but like, there's a spooky sense when you're his film office was at the house. I think he's changed it now, but at one time he had 3 houses next to each other. There was the residence, the art studio, and then like the film business, right? And they weren't huge houses, but it was like a compound. And I'd be up there meeting with Anthony, Mr. DeBlasi, who's wonderful, great director, and Joe Daly, who was my roommate, and
Mhm.
we'd be talking about breaking down Midnight Meat Train of these stories. And then Clive would, you'd see him like outside the window, like walking through the bushes, like, and he's like, and I'm like, what? Like, he's scary. He's gonna come in and do this. But yeah, that guy's very fascinating, interesting. He's one of those writers that like lives in his worlds. Like those worlds are real. When he's writing them, he's in there. So, you know, it's great when you see people that are that connected to their material and not just like, oh, I think it'd be good to do a ghost story. Like he's in it. So that's good. Very, very inspiring.
Is that something that you have struggled with at any point in your career where um, you get so invested in a particular project or maybe something you're really excited about that I don't want to say that you would neglect family or anything like that, but other aspects of life start to kind of maybe, because I've heard it so many times. It's like, well, I started to have problems with my girlfriend or my wife or my husband, or I started to have problems with family because I wasn't really spending much time taking care of other things I needed to.
Yeah, it can consume you for sure. I mean, when you get to that point where it's taking over a lot of your headspace, I think that can be a good thing. I mean, it's good to allow it for a time period when it's necessary. Like when you're in it, when you're shooting it or when you're writing it, that's okay. I think you have to balance it though. You can't, it's not like method acting where you're like in it all the time and you go home and you're in the character. I don't get that. But I think I yeah, I've never gone crazy. A little bit. Sometimes they drive you crazy. Especially like when you have kids and you're writing a story about a kid who gets hit by a truck. Like
Yeah.
it starts to work on your head. Like you're at a park and they're running around to catch a ball and you're just thinking like, oh my God, the truck is coming. Like it's gonna get them, you can't get it out of your head. So having kids, being a horror writer and having kids is really tough because your protective sense gets triggered. Like you suddenly want to protect these children. That's like it's so strong. But your imagination has been trained to come up with the worst way people can die in the most painful way. So
Mm.
you get the collision of that becomes really tough at some point.
Um, with something like Pet Cemetery, like it's such an iconic IP. When you're adapting and like you're kind of giving a different version to the audiences, um, how did you balance, I suppose, having to quote unquote like respect the source material, but then being able to actually surprise people so it wasn't just like, and we've seen it before where things get remade or rebooted and it's essentially just the same movie with like, now everyone has an iPhone or they're streaming instead of like whatever it was at the time. But a lot of people hold that dear, that material. Do you write with like the audience expectation and stuff in mind, or do you have to completely block that stuff out?
I think you have to keep it there, but you have to keep it at arm's length. You have to remind yourself that not everything in a book is going to work in a movie. Not everything in a story, or sometimes not everything in that book is going to fit in a movie. Like even though you would love it to, and then you have to make choices. And like when we did the Pet Cemetery reboot, we switched the kid who died from Gage to Ellie, and that's a big thing. You're going to get shredded from the Stephen King fans no matter what you do. You got to. There's going to be a level of shredding that you have to just accept, because they want to see all those stories adapted, but they're never exactly the way they imagine it. So it's like you're going to get shredded. So,
Yeah.
but switching the kids is a big deal because at least with the movie, the movies that came out in the 80s, like Gage was such a big part of it. Like, you want to play with you, like all that kid stuff. And then, but you have to remember that after that came out, then you have Child's Play, and there's been like 10 of those movies, and there's been so many like kids with knives things. It's like to do that now would feel like we've seen it so many times. So like what else? And then for me, having the child who goes through the death cycle in that story, having her be a little older, having her being a little like really close to her father. In the book, there's the Ellie and Lewis relationship is very tight. Like that's really important in the book. She just isn't the one who gets hit by the truck. And when you put her in that situation and Lewis is the one who's making these bad decisions, it really makes sense. And I think Stephen King at one point, he was like, yeah, he's like, that was really smart. He's like, that worked really well for the movie. And once he says that, say that online. So please, like, say that. not before the movie comes out. I don't know. So that went over pretty well. I was nervous about that though. I was nervous about that. But with like, I don't think with Midnight Meat Train, where you've got a 12-page short story that's a little more, niche, like the fans of Clive Barker know it really well, but not a lot of other people. I think people are willing to see whatever you put up there. So you have to kind of gauge how precious the material is to the fan base.
Yeah. Would you say, like, you've done, both originals and several adaptations? Would you say that there's challenges that that things that challenge your instincts as a writer for an IP, that maybe you wouldn't have to deal with when it comes to an original creation? Is it just a case of like, oh, well, the source material, we've got to be some way respectful to what it is?
Well, I think for me, it's like once I find the movie within the IP and I see what the movie is, then the source material kind of fades in my mind. Like then I'm just seeing the movie already, and I'm just writing to that, and I'll think like, oh wait, that didn't happen in the book or whatever. Like I'll start writing, just going off and doing whatever, and you sometimes have to go back and like make sure that you're not like really violating something that's going to piss people off. But you can't write to make your audience happy. You got to write for the film. You got to write for the characters in the film. You write for the world. Write for that movie to be good. And people are going to like it or hate it. But if you do the best movie, then, that's your best shot at people liking it.
I think a lot of people in your position would probably, I know a lot of people say, oh, I would love to reimagine this movie, or I would love to give my idea about this or my version. But then if it really came to it, a lot of people would probably run the other way for fear of like, oh, what if, like you said, Stephen King fans, like there's always going to be a certain amount of them that are just going to come for you regardless of what you make or don't make. But you seem to have kind of embraced that role.
I think it's like I find it to be a challenge that's fun. Like how can I do this? How can I fit in the lane that makes the fans happy, but also makes me happy telling a story that's an original in the skin of this thing. So that's kind of a challenge that I find fun. It's sort of like a puzzle that you have to unwrap, and that could be fun. Sometimes I'll read or see a movie that I get, there's a submission, and I look at it and I think this is a terrible movie, but it's that one concept is great. And in that moment, I'll just like throw everything out. I'll be like, it's if it's not good, it's not good. Like it's always the best idea wins. So it's hard to beat Stephen King with good ideas, but there's other stuff, and there's a lot of stuff right now that's like rebooting or reimagining sort of, I would like B movies or sort of like, cult movies. Yeah. And those, I think, cult classics people can be very precious about, but you have a little bit more leeway to just sort of take the idea and run with it and come up with some. I'm always trying to find like, how can we put the movie itself like in the movie? Like how is the original sort of reflected by the world, or like is there some way, like if we fell in love with this movie from the 80s and we're doing it now, how do we like make this movie not just feel contemporary, but feel like it has a foot in that world as well, and not just go back to the 80s and redo it? Like I don't want to see another reboot of an 80s property that's in the 80s and every person is like, oh, I'll put the cassette tape in, and it's like, oh, look, we're in the 80s. Like okay, we get it. So there's all those choices, but I find it to be fun. I find it to be a puzzle you get to solve.
I feel like everybody says that stuff, they we want nostalgia. We want to go back to the 80s. We want to go back to the 70s, the 90s, until they get it. And then they're like, oh, that was garbage. That's so forgettable. I don't care about it anymore.
It's funny because I wrote, when I did the Pet Sematary prequel, what struck me about it was, there's a chapter in the book where Judd tells the story about Timmy Baterman. And we did a piece that was in the extras on Pet Sematary that was, the tale of Timmy Baterman. And we had Lithgow for the last day he was on set, and the publicity unit was there. So we had like 3 camera units working to gather as much material as we could. And John was there, and the studio had asked me to write something for John that we can use in the publicity material. Just anything, just have John say stuff. And I had always thought about that chapter as a way to get back into the story to stay connected to the book, but like do something different. And what was really cool about it in the book, Judd is talking about when he's 18 years old or 18 years old, and he's in his 70s. And the book came out in the mid 70s or early 80s. I can't remember when the book came out, but it would have been it would have been the World War II that the kid was coming back from. And now, like, since 2019 was when Judd was in his 70s, it was Vietnam. And so there was an opportunity to, like, I always loved Vietnam movies. I'm a big fan I grew up with those. So like the idea of putting that music, that culture, also like, I pitched it originally as like, it's apocalypse now, I'm coming home, and like all this stuff, like meets Pet Sematary. And they're like, what? But there's something really modern or something about that time period that mirrors this time period. Our culture in America was being ripped apart by different people who supported the war, people who were against the war. People always say like, oh my God, the times, there's nothing been as bad as this. And I'm like, in 1969, there were 5,000 bombings in America. The progressive left was blowing people up. The Weather Underground was like blowing people up. Like, it was nuts. So we forget, but there was a lot of stuff to pull from that time period that mirrored our situation today. So I found that to be really fun and cool.
When did that idea, as you're making the first one, was that something that was percolating in your mind at that point, or had the studio already, like, I don't know, expressed interest in, like, hey, Jeff, we might like to do this again?
Well, I had it in the back of my mind as a potential way to go. It's certainly a way you could spin off another story. I don't know and I always thought, like, I also had a idea that, like, the Pet Sematary, especially because it's like this spiral, right, with all these little graves with different pets from different time periods that go back through time. And there's sort of like this museum of a time machine that's in there. Like, some of the pets are like from 10 years ago or 5 years ago. Some of them are from, 100 years ago or whatever. So I felt like you could tell stories that were based off of each of those pets that came, like from different time periods. There was an opportunity to open up the world to a lot of stories that could be anything as long as their pet was in there. So I thought that was a fun way to, send that, expand the world. And then the other thing I had was this Timmy Baterman chapter, because the chapter is like 20 pages. It's like a really well thought out short story that's tucked into that book. And, with characters and the whole thing that goes on. And Timmy was a cool character. And when they asked me to do something for Lithgow for the publicity, I thought, well, we got to do something with that chapter. So, I just wrote this monologue for him, and it was like a page and a half of him, like, just talking to the camera. And we didn't have time to, like, stage anything. So he comes walking up. We had the woods set was clear for an hour. Mm-hmm. We're like, okay, let's go in there. And John is so cool. He's like, yeah, I'll do it. And then we wrote it out on cue cards for him, because he's like, I don't have time to, memorize. Yeah. He read it and he's like, this is so cool. Let's do it. And he was getting in an airplane, like, he was leaving in an hour. We had like 60 minutes with him, and he comes walking, he's like, okay, let's just shoot it and we'll see what happens. And he comes walking up the path with the shovel and puts the shovel on the ground and sits on a rock. And I'm like holding the cue cards and I'm like, switching them. And he just like reads it, and he just becomes Judd. He's Lithgow, right? He just throws it out there. And I'm like, holy shit, that was fucking awesome, dude. And we did like 3 takes maybe. And he's like, yeah. I said, that's great, dude. We got it. Like, you're good. And he, big hug, and he laughed. And I was like, he goes, this is so cool. We should do this like as a black box theater thing in New York. I'm like, anytime you want, John, let's do it. So he was really into it. And so from that moment, just seeing it come to life, I was like, that's a movie. There's a movie there. And that became that was my rallying cry with the studio. But it took like, I had to pitch it like 7 different times before people were like, okay, like, they were like, I had to really bang my the hammer on the studio to make them do it.
Really? Because like, and I have heard that a lot where studio or whoever likes an idea, but then you kind of find yourself having to have multiple meetings anyway just to
Oh
get
yeah.
it over the line. It's like, yeah, we love it, whatever. And I know, like, I've heard from a lot of Irish filmmakers, and some there's more and more of them seem to kind of get in these like quote unquote hits or whatever, and then they travel to LA and they're like, oh, it's amazing, I'm going to LA, and I'm talking to these people that I kind of grew up alongside of, I guess, and they're like, oh, I made this movie and I done something with Shutter, and now I've made this and that, done a thing at a festival. Now Universal and Blumhouse want me to go out there and they want me to do a thing. And then they come back and I'm like, well, how'd you get on? They're like, oh yeah, I done this thing. People were saying, oh, haha, you're on the water bottle tour. And I'm like, what's that? And they're like, oh yeah, I visited like every studio. Everybody loved me, loved all my ideas. And then I just never heard anything again.
Well, I always say you never have a bad meeting. No one's ever at the end of a meeting said, well, that kind of sucks. You're stupid. Get out of here. Like, they're all
Yeah.
like, yeah, like, thank you so much. It's amazing. You can tell sometimes when it didn't connect, but I think it's really hard for executives to say yes to stuff because then they're responsible for it.
Yeah.
If
If it doesn't work.
if there's something that comes out of the library, or your boss says, "Hey, I want to do this book," then it's like, great. Okay, then you can take chances, you can take swings on it, and not your fault. But if you champion some original project from a filmmaker who's done one or two things, and they put millions of dollars into it, I mean, your neck's on the line. So they're really looking for any reason to say no. That's what
Mm,
they're. As soon as they can find a reason to say no, it's done. You're done. And you have to go through your pitches and make sure there's no easy no's. There's not
yeah.
nothing that people are just going to latch on and say, well, we don't kill babies, or we don't do this, or we don't, like, we can't do that. Like, if there's something like that in it, just don't put it in the pitch, put it in the movie, but keep your mouth shut when you're selling it.
Yeah. Um, from that initial Pet Cemetery movie, you kind of went on a little bit of a run there. Like I mentioned, probably doing something that, a lot of people would shy away from or be scared of, the idea of, giving a take on an existing IP. I mean, Jacob's Ladder, Grudge, um, the two Pet Cemeteries. You mentioned the challenge of that. Has that become kind of, or I don't know if you mind or if there's even a fear, but like that they continually come back and go, well, you know what, Jeff, that worked with this, and we did actually like that. So here's another one. Here's another one. Here's another one.
If people want to hire me to adapt their stuff, great. I'll take the work. Um, just because it's, as a, when you work in TV, you pretty much have a job for 9 months of the year. And then if the show gets picked up, you got a job the next year for 9 months. And then as a feature writer, especially in a genre where you're usually doing like indie or low budget or stuff that's like around the fringes, you just need the work. So I'll take it and I'll put my hat on and try to figure out the puzzle. But you got to remember those movies all came out in a cluster, but they were developed over 10 years prior to
Yeah.
that. And so they weren't I wasn't working on them in that succession. And like with me, Jacob's Ladder was really difficult. That was one that I was like, oh, how do you remake that? Like, you shouldn't. My instinct was you should not remake this. You shouldn't, because it's just iconic. And it's a movie that has it's like a Twilight Zone episode. Like, once you've seen it, you're done. Like, you know what happens, right? So how do you go back and do that? And I was really sort of struggling with that. I wanted to do it. I wanted to find something that had that same impact as a twist at the end, that sort of M. Night thing where you're like, oh, like it's all in a zoo or whatever, and you're like, oh my god. And that's really hard to like force those ideas to come, but it needed to be, for me, the essence of the Jacob's Ladder movie, the original, was that your guy is in these two different worlds. He doesn't know if this world is reality or that world's reality. Is my son alive or is my son dead? And and then he follows these two pathways that become sort of meshed together, and then at the end it's like, oh, he was like grappling with the different paths his life took, and he's laying in the tent and he's dead on the field. So that I thought was really interesting. So you had to have those elements. And so when I did, I think it actually, this is such a cliche, but it actually came in a dream. Like this actually came up in a dream where we had been working on this idea of it's two brothers, and it's like the one brother is like the grunt, and they're both army kids, like their dad was in the army, so they're both in the military, but one's like a surgeon, like a marine surgeon, and the other guy's like a grunt, like he's just like an infantry dude. And we see that the infantry dude dies at the beginning, and it's like, oh, and we're sort of toggling between these worlds where it's like, which one is what's who. And then I came up with this idea, no spoilers, but it had to do with the relationship of the two brothers. And it really had this impact. There was this moment where it just drops like that shoe. And then, it allowed us to toggle between two realities that we weren't sure which was which. And then have that shoe drop moment. And then I think I'm not sure that everybody understood it. I don't think the director understood it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
I
good.
know.
I got a lot of work off of that script. It was the script was amazing. And then I think it got kind of lost in the shuffle. I'm not going to pin it on one person, but if you're going to, probably director is a good way to go.
Is it difficult for you, because as from an outside perspective, as an audience perspective, it seems quite, some people would say, oh, it's such a first world problem to say something like that, but it's got to be quite taxing, mentally, emotionally, and probably even physically as well at points, to constantly be creative and constantly have fresh ideas. Because I often wonder, there's lots of times I have these real vivid dreams, and so much so that I feel like I have to write them down because they're just so out there. Or
Yeah.
I might see something like, oh, wouldn't that be cool for a short story or a short film or blah blah blah. But I can't imagine being in a position where it's like, you're kind of expected to always be, every time the phone rings, it's like, hey Jeff, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but we don't want it to be like Texas Chainsaw, but we
Yeah.
do. Give me a take like in 10 minutes, and then you're supposed to just like instantly know.
Yeah, it's really hard. I mean, because if you're a painter, if you're an artist who works on your own timeline, like you're creative when you're creative, and usually if you can get into a routine where you have these regular creative sessions, then you tend to slip into that creative space easier, because your brain and your spirit is ready to go there. So I recommend anyone who's doing this in any capacity to like try to get a routine going. But yeah, it can be hard. Sometimes you just don't want to, you just don't feel creative, but you got to, it's the worst. It's torture to go and sit there and you stare at your laptop and you're like, I got to churn out 5 pages and I just don't want to do it. It's really hard. But either you force yourself to do it or you procrastinate and you take the day off and the next day off, and then you have to write 20 pages on the day 3. So it's like, sometimes that works in your favor, sometimes it doesn't.
So you like to stay, I don't want to say regimented, but like,
I'm terrible.
kind of,
my routine is out the window.
because this is something I'm always fascinated by, because
I think other people should do that. Everyone should do that. I should probably do it too, but it's really hard.
yeah, it is like, and somebody said it to me before. We Ireland has kind of in recent years become quite good. Like the Irish Film Board and stuff are doing a lot of things for shorts and scripts and stuff like that. And there's a lot of opportunity there, I think, for people to get noticed maybe over here more so than it used to be before. Before it used to be like, well, you've got to either get to the UK, or if you don't get to the UK, you've got to go to the States, and if not, you just can't really do anything. That's it.
Yeah. No, they've been
But
very
like,
active, really good. I mean,
yeah.
I know filmmakers who are Irish who've gotten their stuff made that way. It's great. Like my favorite Irish filmmaker is probably Glenn McQuaid, and
Mhm.
he just finished a movie. I think he just completed a movie recently, and he's just a great guy. You get him on the show. He's great, awesome dude, hilarious.
It's and the reason I bring it up is 'cause someone gave me advice before. They were like, you know what you should do? Like those stories you have ideas for and stuff. You should just write 3 pages a day, and like in a month you'll have 90 pages, and that's all you need. And it's like, and when I say that, I'm like, oh, that sounds really simple. And
Yeah,
then like just the idea of that alone, like after the initial like first 3 pages, it becomes, wait a sec, I've got to do this every day for 90 days. Even if it's garbage at the end of the month, I'm like,
yeah,
how can I even get 90 pages together?
yeah. It's a challenge. I think once you get going, where's my little? Here's my inspiration that I made for myself. So this sits on my desk, and it says, "Just start." And then once you start, because I'm always sitting here like, oh, I better pay my bills, I better do something, man. And like I don't want to open that thing up. But once you start, it tends to just go. And then once I get started, I turn around, I say, work happy, like try to enjoy it. You're really lucky to be doing this for a living. So when you start complaining about it, it kind of feels stupid. And it can be super hard. I'm not saying it's easy and you should just love it all the time, but try to enjoy what you're doing and remember that we're lucky to be able to do this stuff. And, that helps a little bit. But yeah, it can be really tough sometimes. And but I tell people who want to be writers, especially people who are first timers, they're like just getting into it. Like, I have this great story and I just don't know how to write a screenplay. I said, don't worry about writing a screenplay. Write your story. Just write your story down. Even just like write down the bullet points of it. Like, just start writing. And it doesn't have to be good. Allow yourself to be bad. I wrote a lot of bad scripts before I got one that was mediocre.
It's funny because I think nobody really likes to say that, as in, like, for every one script that I had that was considered good by somebody else or turned into a movie, I've made countless other things. I've spent countless hours working on stuff, sleepless nights, whatever.
Yeah. And all the scripts I've written that are decent, that end up becoming something or people gravitate towards, were bad at some point on the way there. And you just have to accept that it's okay. Like, you're not going to get to the end result unless you allow yourself the freedom to fuck it up and then, make it work. That's part of the process. So you have to do it.
So when you do that, when you sit down and, like, let's say things just start to flow, do you just allow whatever's going to come out and then worry about rewrites and kind of going back on it
I try
afterwards?
to I try to do a fair amount of outlining, so I kind of know like where it's going. I wouldn't say that like it strays, like there's a whole act that's different, like goes off in some other direction. So structurally, I kind of have an idea. If there's new ideas that come up that are great and it's going to change everything, then I'll let it happen and I'll think about it later. But I usually try to write the first draft really quickly, like just vomit draft. You just write it out. Don't worry about the dialogue. Don't go back and rewrite the scenes to make them good because they're probably going to change. And then just get it down on once it's down, once you've like wrestled it to the ground, then you can go back, then you can start to like take a step back, look at it, read it, and go back over it and think about it. And that's when you start really writing, is like when once you go back and start doing it again. That's when it becomes fun. And then you start finding like you get these little gems that pop up in between the stuff that you knew was in there. There's like all these little things that come up, and it's like, oh, once you get a bunch of those strung in there, then you're like, oh, now I've got like the makings of a script. And then you start polishing, and then at some point it's done. But that's your first draft. That's like that. At the end of that process, you write, rewrite, polish. That's your first draft. That's
Yeah, that's the part I think that people very quickly who think they might want to take up, writing or whatever, very quickly go, well, that's it. I'm done with that now anyway.
yeah.
Yeah.
And just remember that like everybody wrote bad stuff, and bad's relative. And some of the worst stuff in the world is great. I mean, if
That's a
it's
good way
really
of looking at it.
if it's really bad, that's a real skill set. It's a really like I mediocre and boring is awful, but like Something that's really bad is beautiful. I mean, I watch Starship Troopers over and over again, and it's great, but it's bad. It's wonderful and awful at the same time, and it keeps aging well and horribly at the same time. It's Verhoeven's awesome for that. Like you can watch what Basic Instinct's awesome. I mean, Showgirls is just super fun.
Are you of the mind then that I've heard it before, put like people say, well, the biggest issue you have when you create something, whether it be the screenplay or whatever, the story at the beginning or the final film, is when people just don't care one way or the other.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm always thinking like, how could this be made? Like, and then I also think it's so hard to make a movie. It takes so many. You have to jump through so many hoops, and you have to get lucky. Even the worst movie in the world deserves a standing ovation. Like you did it. That sucked, but you did it. Good for you. And just try to be positive. Although there's some movies that really piss me off. The ones that feel like you feel the director or whoever like congratulating themselves during the movie, like, aren't we clever? Then that pisses me off a little bit. But other than that, I'm pretty lenient.
Do you have any comfort movies, like ones that you would put on in the background or watch more often than others?
Well, through these past 5 years, which has been pretty dark, especially fires, strike,
Yep.
pandemic. I had some personal stuff going on, like, losing people you love, whatever. It's been a tough 5 years. So I watched Apocalypse Now probably 20 times. And because I was definitely on my journey up the river. And I love that movie so much that I could just put it on and just stare at it. So,
Mm.
but that one's comfort food. And then I do Criterion Channel. They're really good about like, curating their library. So they'll be like David Cronenberg week or whatever. I'm like, oh, I'll go back and watch. I hadn't watched Dead Ringer since it came out. I watched it in the theater when it came out. I haven't seen it again. And it's so weird. So weird. How on earth could you make that movie now?
I know. Yeah, I often
It's
think that
about
is.
medical
I'm like,
twins who are gynecologists and they start cutting people up the inside. I mean, it's like, what? Like, never, never. And Cronenberg did it because he's just weird and a wizard.
do you think about that when creating something or when a movie comes out? You mentioned like going through hard times and being able to kind of just stare at that movie and just kind of be somewhere else maybe for an hour or two. And I feel like a lot of people feel like that a lot of times. Maybe some people more than others. They use film, they use things like that to kind of maybe escape or get away or whatever. And I actually have someone close to me, a close friend who's also a pretty big horror fan, who said that about Pet Cemetery Bloodlines. Funny enough,
Oh,
and
how
it's
good.
that, yeah, and it's that thing of like, I don't know what it is exactly. I can't explain it, but it's just like my go-to. Like if I just had that day from hell, that week from hell, or something's going on, I can just put that on, and it's kind of like,
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's certain movies that no matter how many times I watch them, I get swept up in the movie and I'm not thinking about other stuff. So it turns off the chatter in your brain.
mm,
It's becoming harder and harder to find those films, the newer ones. So the comfort food movies tend to be ones that you've loved for years. But then Under the Skin comes out, and I'm like, that movie just swept me away I mean, I was obsessed with it. Black Swan, I was obsessed with it for a while. Um, and the movies are so good. Like I can't put those on and not be just swept into the worlds and into the characters. So those movies are great when you find those. I think they're very valuable and dear. You should keep them close to your heart.
do you get a chance now to like consume a lot of stuff, or is that even something you're interested in, like keeping? I don't want to say keeping up to date because there's so much content out there now, but do you try and get to the movie theater or see what's new on Paramount or Netflix
I
or whatever?
I do, yeah, and it's really hard. I don't like especially with television. Like I'll watch the first couple episodes, usually first three, and then I mean, sadly, you get jaded. I can usually figure out within the first 2 or 3 episodes kind of where the season's going, like who's been set up as the red herring and who's going to be the twist and where this. I not be right, but I get the general sense of like what's happening. I'm like, okay, I understand that. Like Severance, I love Severance, and I got to episode 3, 4, and I was like, all right, I get it where it's doing, and then you hear people talking about it like, oh, the numbers, this is it. And I'm like, whatever. Like they're gonna keep throwing little twists that everyone's gonna have to figure out. And I'm like, you guys go figure it out. I'm busy. And then, but with like movies, I tend to get excited about movies. I try to go see movies in the theater. I saw Nosferatu in the theater. That was awesome. Took my kids. I saw, I like to be in the theater. That's an experience. Usually it's for genre films or films that are spectacular. Even like I might go see Mission Impossible. I don't know. I kind of want to see Tom Cruise like strapped to an airplane. He does the same thing over and over again. They're basically selling a stunt reel. I'm like, I don't know. Like what has anyone talked about like what Ethan Hunt does in the last movie? It's like, who cares? He's like, no, he's on a motorcycle. He's on a helicopter. I don't know. And then yeah, I'd like to go. I see horror movies. I like to go see, like stuff that's being revived too. I like to go see like, the American Cinematheque's really good here of doing like these revival programs where it's like you can go see the Warriors from 1970.
Yeah, yeah.
And they often have like a cast member or someone there. That's part of what makes LA kind of interesting and fun is so many of the people in the film business are here, and you can just ask them like, we're going to show your movie on Saturday, can you come down? You get like, people, amazing filmmakers coming talking about what they did 30, 40 years ago. It's great. So I like that stuff, and it's all film nerds. You get in there and it's like all dudes are like, it's like it's such a sweaty geeky crowd.
Yeah.
I love it. So that's cute and fun.
I instantly know what you mean when you say that. Having worked for GameStop and been in this kind of like space for many years as well as a fan, I get exactly what you mean. I can almost taste the room.
Yeah.
Is it difficult when when you're watching something as a fan? Is it difficult to like that professional side of you to, like you said about like, well, I can kind of get where this is going. Like when you're watching a movie, is it hard not to be like, I know what you're doing. You're setting this up because you're going to do the thing, and then it's going to
It's
be.
really hard. It's really hard for me to keep my mouth shut with my kids. That guy's the killer. Oop.
Whoops.
Whoops. They're like, Dad, shut up. And I'm like, and I'll just, once I figure it out, then I'll just start talking over the movie. And they're like, dude, I'm watching this. And I'm like, oh, God. Like, what do you guys want for dinner? So yeah, it's tough. And I also think like there's a lot of content out there that is not designed to really shake it up. It's designed to fill that space that you know and love. Like it should be familiar. And so when it's that stuff, I can figure it out and I lose my interest pretty quickly. But when it's something that I like lean into, the Barbarian caught me off guard, that middle flip and the tone flip where, it's just like, you're like, whoa. So that was really cool. And sometimes there's little things like that just catch you off guard.
You're the second person today, who's mentioned that movie, because over here I've been banging on about that movie for so long, and everybody always gave me shit because of the end, and they were like, no, it got too goofy with the thing and I didn't like it. I was like, dude, I love that movie.
I love, so the agent, Justin Long, the agent character, right? He's such or the director character, whatever. Like he's such a classic douchebag from the film business. Like and it's so out of the world of that movie. Like you're in Detroit and it's like rainy and it's like a Airbnb thriller. And you're thinking, oh, this is like the guy's it's gonna be like a tense thriller in this house, and it becomes something totally different. And like when you cut to Justin Long in his convertible and he's getting fired from his movie because of some Me Too moment, it's like, it's just so out of, I just thought it was amazing. Or like in Don't Breathe, when, you're in a really tense thriller, like a suspenseful thriller where these 3 kids and they have like a morally correct reason for doing what they're doing, but what they're doing is wrong. They're like robbing a blind man. It's really mean. And they end up walking into a situation where it's sort of karmic, but you get the sense that this movie is about these three kids and this guy who's like this victim. And then very quickly you're like, that guy's not so much a victim. And then when you get to, I won't spoil it, but when you get to like say the turkey baster,
oh Jesus Christ, yeah.
And
it's just like,
I screamed out loud. I saw that in the movie theater. I think I was by myself too, because I'm tired of trying to recruit my friends to go, or my girlfriend. She's like,
oh, I'm the same.
So I just go. I don't even bother everyone. And I was sitting there and I just laughed out loud. I often laugh at the most inappropriate times because that's my sort of nervous defense mechanism. And I just laughed out loud, like popcorn flying. I was like, oh my God, like you did not. And then I was like, my brain was like, I cannot believe you were allowed to get away with that. But, you know, Fetty just took control. And, but that was a moment where I'm like, wow, this movie just took on another dimension. And I was like, that was so cool and fun, right? That just pulled me in. And then, of course, I ended up meeting Fede later, and he had this cool office. It's like, oh, kind of cool. You know, he's kind of cool. Got all this furniture and shit. And on the coffee table, there's a turkey baster. I'm like, that's not. He's like, yes, it is, my friend. I'm like, oh, God, really? I'm like, I don't want to touch it, but I kind of do. Oh, God. I was like, good for you. Good for you.
Is that something that you try to bring to your work? Is those moments like that, those concepts, those ideas? Yeah. And is that what you think would separate from, you know, you mentioned there's a lot of things that just come out to kind of like fill a void. Companies buy movies, I think, just to be like, yeah, well, we're in the horror business, or we're in the comedy business, or we're in the whatever business. And there's a lot of times I've seen people make movies that I would consider are quite good movies, and they just disappear into obscurity because they were dropped with 25 other movies on whatever, Netflix or wherever.
It's hard. It's hard for movies to get clicked on and for people to play past the first 2 minutes. I was talking to someone from Netflix just to kind of get a sense of what they wanted. They're like, we need movies where we can tell the audience what it is in a thumbnail picture.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, don't they, I mean, they click on it, they watch it for a while. Like, don't you have the first act to get them? It's like, you have the first 20 seconds.
That's the thing that kind of scares me about this. Like, I think back to,
because I've done this too. I've done it on Netflix. I'm like, I'll watch like 30 seconds and I'll be, nope. I'll just like, it's like, I'll be that little bitch who's like, I'm not doing it. And I think that's ridiculous. And then I'm like, oh, I did that last night. But it's true. It's true. And it's weird when they have the preview, you click on the trailer, the preview, and it's just like a scene just cut out from somewhere in the movie that like has no context.
It's not a trailer. Yeah. It's just like, boom. And two people are just talking. You're like,
talking, and it doesn't even seem like they took a good scene. They just like randomly took like minute 13 or whatever. It's so weird. So yeah, that's hard. But I think if a movie has that moment where you figured out where it's going, and they pull the rug out, and now you are left in space not knowing what's going to happen, that's my favorite feeling. And I try to put that in my original stuff. I don't necessarily seek that in an adaptation so much, but almost all of my original material has that moment.
What do you like to do to unwind when you don't, like, because I'm sure like a lot of conversations, there's a lot of people like me who probably reach out and say, you know, Jeff, I want to talk about screenwriting, we want to talk about this, I want to talk about that. What interests do you have outside of your work, and like, what do you do to kind of, because like I said, I can only imagine how fatiguing and how like, oh Christ, I'm just like so worn out with trying to be constantly creative and constantly on the ball with like the next thing.
I don't have any other interests. No, no, I do. I spend time with my lovely girlfriend.
just put that in there.
Yeah. Love you, honey. I watch rom-coms with her, and I get so pissed off. I'm like, you should watch real movies. We're going to have a Hal Ashby weekend. And she's like, what? Dude. She's like, is it film school or are we having fun? I'm like, okay, it's not film school, but I'm like, it kind of is. That's fun. and I get to watch a lot of stuff that I wouldn't normally put on. And what else? I mean, we've been kind of homebodies since like the fires and everything. Look, I live right by the beach. The beach is right there, so I can take my dog out and go on beach walks. And I enjoy my neighborhood. It's fun. There's stuff to do. Like I just go bum around, and like I just like to be out with people. Part of my job, and I say this to aspiring writers, is like you cannot watch movies and go write movies and base them on other movies. You know, not everybody can be Tarantino, who takes other movies, cuts them up, and makes them into his own movie, and it's fun. You know, it's like you need to go observe the world and people and how they interact and think. You know, go. I love weird people. One of my favorite things to do is to like sit in a restaurant and just be like, my lovely girlfriend will be sitting there and she'll be saying something and she's like, "Are you listening?" I'm like, "That guy is a serial killer." And she's like, "What?" The whole time I've just been like studying his feet and his shoes and his everything. And I'm like, she's like, "What?" And I love like looking around and being like trying to analyze who people are and how they're related. And you know, I'm like, she does not want to be on this date. He's like, whatever. Like, and thinking about that and the way watching the way people talk and my son is 16, so when he and his friends are around, I'm always kind of like hanging around, like listening to their language now. And I'm like, I always want to be like, that doesn't make sense. And then they're like, shut up, old guy. But I need to like absorb it. I need to absorb it so I can like, I'm not trying to mimic them, but like, I just want to hear how people think that aren't from my perspective. And it's just really fun. And I'll go up to any weirdo on the street and just start talking. Like, and they come to me. I'm a freak magnet. Like anywhere I am, in like in the open street, if there's like a bunch of people and then like one crazy person with the pants on backwards and they're like been sleeping outside and they're like they come up, they go right to me. Just I don't know why. And I'm always like, "Hey, how's it going?" Like end up in a conversation. So I love that until it gets weird.
Is it cool for dad to make movies, or is that like seen as like cringe?
Yeah, they like it. I think they like it more than they let on. At least I hope they do. I can tell like their friends are like, "Whoa, you did that movie." Like the friends are cool, but like my actual kids are like, "Yeah." And whenever I try to show them movies that I think are great for them to see, they just really kick up a fuss. And like, I think I'll never outlive The Dark Crystal. When they were younger, I made them watch the Dark Crystal. I'm like, "Guys, it'll be really fun. It's like cool, like Jim Henson, like whatever." Like, and they're like, "Who's Jim Henson? And what the fuck is this?" It's a bunch of weird dolls like talking to each other and running through a fantasy forest. I'm like, "It's The Dark Crystal." And it's so long and slow. Like it literally takes its time in every scene. And they were just flipping out. And then now anything I say, we should watch this or watch that, they're like, "Is it going to be another Dark Crystal?" Like they've just hammered me on it for years. And so I'm like, I've just been beat down by that. But everyone is watching this. Please go watch The Dark Crystal. It's awesome.
Would you um I don't know, would you be interested, like if any of your kids came to you and were like, "Dad, I might like to like get into writing or filmmaking or something like that." Is that something that you would not push them to do, but would you like to see them do that or support that? Or would you kind of be like, I don't know, maybe just do something else?
I would support it if it's something that they really wanted to do. Absolutely. I think we need more artists in this world. And I don't think their generation cannot all be influencers.
Yeah.
You cannot have 100% of the population being influencers because who's then being influenced, right? They all seem to want to be an influencer. I'm like, for what? Like what? Like you know what ridiculous proportion of those people actually make money on their thing? It's like, and it's so you got to be really freaking busy creating content every day. It's like kind of annoying. So, but I don't know. Like they look at the world differently, which is cool. They like think of stuff, but I would totally support it. I just say be freaking careful because when I went into writing, people were selling specs for $2 million. Like on Friday, they'd go out on Monday, they'd be in the trades, and I'd be like, "Wow, that's an awesome business. I should get into writing." And then it's like my career started with the strike in 2008, and then there was the Great Recession in 2009, and then then there was another strike and more pandemics and shit. I was like, it's not that fun. It's crazy. Like you gotta, it's a tough business. So you gotta be really into it to do it.
Is there any particular? I have one or two more questions before I let you go. But is there any particular unmade project or a story or an idea that you had that you could talk about that didn't get made?
There's one that I'm still trying. Still
I,
never gonna let it go. And my reps, they're like, don't, please do not bring it up. Don't bring it
what
up.
what
And
is it about that particular project? I know obviously you can't tell us what it
I
is
can
or
tell you all
anything, but
about it. I don't care. I mean, they'll probably get in trouble, but it's called now it's called the Black River, and it used to be called The Hell Within. And my friend Denison Ramalho, who's a great Brazilian filmmaker, director, and I sort of developed it together. We had met and wanted to work together, and we came up with this idea. And a producer friend of ours got involved, and then we brought Slash on the projects with Slash from Guns N' Roses, invested in it, and did so many different incarnations of it. It's been 10, 12 years that thing's been kicking around. I've been changing it, rewriting it, doing stuff on it, whatever. And it's never, and I think I read it, I'm like, how could this not be made? How is people not making it? It's just like had this demon that would change form, and it was so cool. And then it just, for some reason, does not click with anybody else. I can't get people to, they're like, yeah. And I'm like, really? Because I love it. But um, maybe I'm biased because I wrote it, but I think that one. And there's a couple of pieces of IP out there that I will not mention because someone else will go grab it. But I'm like, someone's got to do that movie. That would be crazy. And they're usually pretty obscure. So I'll see something and it was a movie in the 60s or 70s where I'm like, oh my God, if you did that right now and you did it right, then it'd be awesome. So there's that stuff that's out there.
is there ever an interest like you mentioned Black River, something like that? Does it ever come into your mind? Because obviously, you've with in Sanitarium, for example, like you wrote and directed that. Is there ever a part of you that's like, okay, well, no one else is getting behind this. Maybe I should like, I don't know, crowdfund it or just and like go and try and like make it yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been thinking more about that lately. I have a friend, very close friend of mine, who used to live here in Venice Beach and moved to Minnesota. Her grandparents owned a house on a small lake. There's a million lakes in Minnesota. They're everywhere. So this one has maybe a half dozen houses around it. It's small, but
Mhm.
it's her grandparents had this beautiful little house on this little hill, and the lake is right there. And then she had like 60 acres of woods that came with the property. And her family, when the grandparents passed on, it went to the family, but her parents were like, if you move back here where we can be close to you, you can have grandma's house. Like, we'll give it to you. And then she ended up buying another chunk, or she had 40 acres. And then during the pandemic, the state sold off parcels that were weird little parcels in between other properties that the state owned, but they couldn't do anything with. And she and her other neighbor pitched in and bought in auction another, like she has 100 acres of woods. And I'm like, if I cannot come up with a story that takes place in 100 acres of woods, I cannot call myself a horror filmmaker. And then I've got a lot of friends who they're cinematographer there. And, we're the old class now. We're like the older people, and they've all got really great experience. And it's like, I know we could just shoot something by our seat of our pants. And then I don't have to go through the begging process of getting people to make it. And once you have a film that's done, people will watch it because they don't have to then work to get it made. It's like nobody wants to do work anymore. So if you can get it done, and I've been dying to, I came to this town to be a director, and I ended up being a writer because I guess I was good at it, or at least good enough. And in Sanitarium was fun, but it was not, I don't think produced, I didn't have much control over a lot of the choices. So it was one of those where it's like, it's your first job, kid. We're not going to, we shot it on film. It was like Fuji stock. And so I had to get up in the morning and go watch the dailies, at the deluxe
Yeah.
old school. And we had 19 days to shoot it, and we got there was some good fun stuff in there, really bonkers, weird stuff. But then a lot of times we'd come onto the set that we built in this abandoned hospital, and it'd be like painted yellow or orange. And I'm like, what is going, like, this was not in the color palette that we talked about. And they're like, well, we had a truck with a couple cans of paint fell off the back, if you know what I mean. So we went with this color. I was like, because it was free. I'm like, that's like, so there was a lot of things where I was like, okay. Like I didn't know how to navigate those situations back then. And it was interesting. It's fun, very good learning experience. But I think since that time and having had experiences like with Jacob's Ladder, I mentioned earlier, and a couple other ones that I won't name, I won't shame anybody, but like, when I'm writing original material and I hand it to someone else and then they make it their thing, it's really hard for me because I spent so much time and it's something that came out of me. So it's a little piece of my heart and soul. And there are times where, like with the Prodigy, Nick McCarthy, he and I are great friends. We've like become really good friends. He's a great guy, smart, and I love what he did with it. Like sometimes you're proud, but whenever you're handing it off, you don't know what's going to happen. You're not in control of it anymore. So I've kind of, if I'm going to be doing an original thing that's between, under $10 million, I will probably demand to direct it. Just because, that's the level of movie where it's like, I figure you can trust me with that. And then if I'm adapting a screenplay for a studio that's based on a piece of IP that they're very precious about, it's like, get whoever you want, do whatever you want. I'll do my best and you do it. So hopefully there's a couple things that are brewing. Hopefully there'll be some Jeff Buhler written and directed by coming up soon.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Number one, I was going to ask, where can people kind of keep up to date with you and, keep an eye on what potentially might be next and support you?
Well, your podcast, starting with your podcast. I think I got to be better about my Instagram. It's just about like me and my dog have a running reel where we're chasing the driverless cars around. So I'm not very good about keeping people updated, and I should get better at that. So that's a good reminder. I'll think about that. Maybe that's a good idea. I should get on that.
Yeah, I think so because I know that
cell phone. I'll tell you what's going on.
It's the first question that I always get asked by people, like, where can I find out more about such and such, or maybe if someone's discovering your work or maybe didn't know that you were involved in something they love, and then I get a DM or whatever and they're like, hey, where do I find out? And I'm like, I should probably start asking the person on the show, is there somewhere that they would like to direct people?
IMDb. Go look at it. I will try to update. I should get a little website together or something. I actually was going to open a new company for film, and when I get that going, you know what I'll do is I'll put a big in development thing on there and we'll get it going. So this will be good motivation to do that.
What is I know we can't talk specifics, but what's next? Like looking forward over the next year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever time frame you want to put on it. Like what do you hope to, I guess, cross off the list? Is it directing and writing originals?
Well, it's about taking more control, having more agency with how the material gets made, I think. And that comes from, at first, you're just like amazed that anyone's going to buy your stuff. And then you're amazed that anyone's going to make your stuff. And then you're amazed that anyone's going to come watch your stuff. And it takes a while before you're like, well, I would like to do it differently, and then like that starts to eat at you a little while, and you watch a couple swing and miss with your stuff, and you're like, I spent 2 years on that, man, and like now it's like, I can't even look at it. So, so you get frustrated, and you're like, I want to do it myself. But I think so for me, it would be building a small company with a handful of people that's in the model of American Zoetrope, where you're bringing your writer, director, creative friends into the fold, and you have this sort of like artistic utopia where everyone can make whatever they want and nobody controls the purse strings, except then you realize you can't afford to finance anything, so you have to do that. And it's like, that game. But I'd like to build, I'll reveal the name of this company that has not yet been formed. It's called Unsaid Entity, and we're gonna start it. We're gonna get it out there, and we're gonna produce, direct, write, and live in a commune. Probably have like weird, like cult sex thing. All of it.
You're gonna have a uniform.
Yes, one piece. It's gotta be a one piece, and all that. We're gonna do all that, and it's gonna be amazing. And when we get that up, I'll come back on and I'll sell the jumpsuits.
That's what I was going to say. Let's keep in touch until you do that, so you can come back and
I'd love to,
and promote that. Jeff, it's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed this from a, I suppose, a selfish standpoint as well. It's been interesting to kind of pick your brain and hear some of those behind the scenes stories. Final question then. why film? And I don't know if you want to put the spin on it of why horror, but like, what does it mean to you aside from all the, the kind of careery stuff, whatever? What is it about it that drives you to come back every day and still have that? Like, I can feel the energy.
I mean, I've just been a movie fan my whole life. So I think the idea of making movies was so far from something that seemed realistic to me. So I still get a little butterfly in the stomach when I'm like, I get to make a movie. Like, that's still exciting. So there's that childlike awe and wonder with the whole process. And I love watching movies and talking about movies, probably more than my family would like. And then, I mean, so there's that, which is goes a long way. And then I think, I mean, I love other art forms. I love music. I'm a huge music fan. I'm a terrible musician. I wish I have a guitar. I've got, I'm a terrible music. I surf. Here's my surfboards. I'm terrible.
I was wondering, was that a surfboard?
Yeah, I'm terrible at surfing, but I like to do it. I've been doing it since I was in my 20s. I've been doing it for ages. I never got good at it, but I can surf. I can walk 150 feet and I'll be in the water right here. So I like to do it, but for me, film was always the thing. So I'll always end up back there. And I think it's also fun. Like, you can do it till you're old. Look at Clint Eastwood. Is he still alive? He's still alive, right?
I think so.
120 years old. He's still making movies.
Oh, yeah, I know, right? That's actually shocking.
Yeah, and I mean, I've never been on the set of one of his films, but apparently he's like, if you are an actor and you come on there and you do not have your shit figured out, you're done. Like, he's pissed at you. And also, like, that first take is not a rehearsal. Like, if he's got what he wants, it's moving on. And it's like, people are like, wait, when are we gonna do my thing? And it's like, no, your thing's done. You should have got that in the first one. So I love that he goes out there, he's just a grumpy old man, just like, one shot, one take, done. And he just gets it done. I'm like, you fucking hey, you're Clint Eastwood. Do whatever you want.
Yeah, I kind of love that. He's like old stock. He's just like, nah, I'm just gonna do my own thing. Whatever.
We got it.
Jeff, like I said, it's been a pleasure. I would love to stay in touch, and I would definitely love to do this again when some of this stuff can be officially announced. I would love to have you back on and be able to have another chat.
That'd be great. We'll talk soon, hopefully. And I got a lot of stuff brewing, so it's hard to say what's gonna pop up first.
Which one?
You never know. But once something is on the tracks and going, then we'll talk again.
100%. For everybody listening, whether it's YouTube, Rumble, Apple, Spotify, or any of the usual podcast platforms, all the links to the stuff that Jeff's been talking about will be down below in the description, movies and stuff like that. So do check those out. And like I said, it's been a pleasure. I wish you all the best, and I can't wait to chat again.
Thank you, Aaron. Great to meet you.
Thank you.
Good to talk.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks.